Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Transforming Data Centers, Doing More with Less in the Cloud. In today's rapidly evolving digital healthcare landscape, IT leaders are tasked to do more with less while driving innovation and increasing their security postures. This webinar will explore and highlight how migrating data centers and key workloads to a secure cloud can significantly improve cost efficiencies and productivity, enabling leaders to advance and expedite their digital strategies. Hear how organizations have embraced the principle of doing more with less, optimizing their IT budgets, allowing them to focus on strategic imperatives. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to today's speakers. Jason Jones, who's the Global Customer Manager for Healthcare here at Rackspace, and Jack Crowley, our General Manager for Rackspace Healthcare Cloud. Gentlemen, could you introduce yourselves a little deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rich. Jason Jones. I've been at Rackspace here 2 years, almost 2 years exactly. And like Rich said, I'm the global customer service manager. I part of my duties in the healthcare leadership team here is I own the executive relationship between Rackspace and Epic, and just really happy to be here today. Thanks, Rich.
My name is Jack Crowley. As Rich mentioned, I am the general manager of the Rackspace Healthcare Cloud here at Rackspace, responsible for operations of our customers' Epic environments, the underlying infrastructure, project management, customer success, and product management. Thanks, Rich, for the introduction. Looking forward to today's chat.
Thank you guys for the introductions. Now, we prepared a couple of slides to help with the conversation today. So I'm going to kick it off with Jason. Jason, could you get us started on market dynamics?
Absolutely, Rich. Thanks. So today we're going to dive into the healthcare market dynamics and kind of what's shaping our industry today and kind of how we can solve some of those problems. So when we think about what's impacting healthcare today, 60% of the C-suite has indicated that EMR optimization is top initiatives, right? We understand that and we continue to grow that. Optimizing healthcare spend, right? A lot of these numbers up here, I'm not going to dive into individually, but it's really intriguing what's happening from a spend perspective. And as we move into that, the imminent cuts that are coming from the Medicare, Medicaid, the impact of the $32 billion in the industry, it continues to just impact us all, daily, and how we're seeing those impacts across the organization. We continuously hear these topics over and over and over from different organizations globally, right? We need to do more with less as we think about how this impact of Medicare, Medicaid, what that's going to do as we look globally in the impact of just the economy and how services are delivered and the cost of that, right? And so continuously impacting these budget cuts, driving transformation. Transformation historically has been a real buzzword, right? And so really getting down to what that means is how do we eliminate that technology debt and move on this continuum from a standard operating model to truly a cloud operating model, right? In a hybrid fashion, understanding that that's where the direction is going to take. Also, looking at the security posture, improving our security posture. In today's society, we understand that security, ransomware, all of those things, it's not an if, it's a matter of when, right? And we understand that. And so those three topics continuously are impacting us today.
Jason, thank you for discussing the market dynamics and all the challenges that healthcare leaders are facing today. Jack, I'm going to ask you, if you could you discuss a little bit about how we approach mapping cloud journeys for our customer base?
Yes, thanks, Rich. Certainly, as we talk about transforming data centers and doing more with less in the cloud, part of that is mapping your cloud journey. And I would argue to some degree it's the most important part in our journey to the cloud, right? Because as we have all seen many times in our lives, when we do things without great plans, those can result in less than optimal outcomes. That's in large part why we have found ourselves, or many of us have found ourselves in situations with significant technical debt, bespoke solutions where we have to employ talent just to keep that solution running because now it's ingrained in our workflows. And it's an exponential cost increase, right? As we introduce more complexity into our environments without a plan. So when we talk about mapping your cloud journey, and part of the reason we take a strategy that Jason will take you through here shortly, is we want to start with making sure that we nail the first part of that journey, which is going through an advise phase. Let's talk about what you have today, what you've installed, what are your application, what's in your application portfolio. You probably should do an application rationalization practice so that we can move forward with putting you in the best foundational spot as we talk about, getting rid of some of that technical debt, and we work through the advise phase of any cloud journey. It just becomes imperative to put forward our best plans so that we can end up with less bespoke solutions, less technical debt, and honestly, less people and process debt as well. Then we move into a transform phase. This is where we agree upon a plan and we have built a more or less, things can always change. We've all been part of enterprise projects, but we start to move through and transform, migrate you to the right places. That can be public cloud, it can be private cloud, probably a hybrid cloud, as Jason mentioned. And then a set of services wrapped around that: security services, application management services, infrastructure services that will transform the way that your data centers have been operating, putting you in a much better place to manage it moving forward. Management, ease of management becomes much more efficient as we have moved into your next cloud and your applications are sitting in the optimal place. You've lost some of that technical debt, and your people are able to do more optimization, which is ultimately what I think we all want to be doing. We're stuck in the management phase of our current data centers, of our current solutions applications. Building from an advised plan from the bottoms up in a holistic plan, we're going to end up in a place where we can focus more of our team's efforts on optimizing things and building the next great things versus a constant catch up, managing what is already sitting on the floor. All right, as we talk about getting into the optimized phase, I'd feel compelled to mention that one of the most important, if not the most important consideration that you're going to make as a healthcare or provider organization, a payer organization, could be where and how you are going to place Epic, right? How are you going to run your EHR? It's part and parcel and critical to everything that you do in your organization. In many ways, the heartbeat of the organization. So we want to talk about why we think a specific Epic hosted solution is so viable, right? So we've, over the last year, Rackspace has invested significant capital and hours, people talent, people like Jason, people like Rich, into building what we call our Epic hosted solution, right? And this is the largest third-party hosted Epic space. Outside of Epic, we have the most concurrent users. We have healthcare systems ranging from small to very large. The key thing that we focused on is building this and surrounding it with Epic talent and people that have been in the healthcare space for a significant period of time. You'll see 1,125 years of combined healthcare experience, pretty significant number. The reason for that and why we call that out is, as many healthcare organizations know, healthcare is unique and requires special consideration, starting from the architecture of your solution and platform through the way we operate it. So we want to make sure that people with deep healthcare experience and expertise are part of the design and rollout and then management of that solution. Includes over 150 Epic certifications, 5 nines availability for the application. We have very high RTS scores across our install base. We have very good database latency metrics, all key metrics to meeting honor roll, and other critical requirements to make sure that your EHR is running efficiently. I would be remiss to not mention how important security is. As Jason mentioned, when we were talking about what we're seeing in the industry, everyone right now, top of mind, security. How can we make our solutions and our platform more secure? It's not a matter of if we're going to be attacked, we will be attacked, and hopefully we are architecting our solutions to put us in a position to recover rapidly when those things occur. As we've built our Epic hosting offering, we have put security and compliance at the heart of what we have done, right? This includes all of your standard attestations to make sure that we're high trust compliant, we're meeting HIPAA regulations, et cetera. But then also that we're using best in class tools, next generation firewalls, right? Because we want to be able to see things as they happen and make quick, decisive, and accurate corrections or changes as the market's changing, because we're seeing significant changes in the security space as an industry over the last 1 or 2 years, and it's just going to get more complex. Lastly, right, and Jason will talk about this here on the next portion of this, but how do we wrap all of this into predictable costs? We know the industry is in significant cost pressure with Medicare and Medicaid cost changes right around the corner. We're all being asked to do more with less. So how do we take things that are very complex and make predictable outcomes so that we can manage our budget as an organization and put ourselves in a good place to avoid things like vendor lock-in and other things that have had a significant impact in the healthcare space over the last 1 to 2 or 3 years? Jason, why don't you take us through our methodology and some of our thinkings on next generation managed services?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for passing over to me. So when we think about next generation managed services, right, we're really driving efficiency at scale, right? So we're taking a look at a couple different buckets, right, being the labor costs and the non-labor costs, right, from a T&E, the connectivity, infrastructure, right, with storage, compute, firewalls, all of that, tools and licensing, and then making sure that we're thinking about that coterminus of the licensing, right? So as your licensing starts to fall off, we're purchasing licensing at enterprise wholesale rates, and therefore we can pass a lot of that savings on, right? So we'll evaluate the cost pressures and which one's greater, yours or ours, and then move forward with that. Then from a labor perspective, really trying to look at that level of effort, right? And taking a real hard look at what that looks like, standardization, transforming, growing, and then running the operational capability there. What that does is that puts us into a mode of changing the business while we're trying to run the business, right? So really straddling those two, current mode and future modes of operation, and getting you into a much better place across the board. It's realistically a lot of what we've done before and we've seen in the managed services, except we're owning a lot of the assets and therefore passing that level of delivery and capability on to you, really reducing the run cost and leveraging our teams to deliver that while we're improving the change in investment across the board.
So, Jack, I appreciate you covering the most important workload that a healthcare organization features. And Jason, it's really exciting to hear about managed services for organizations. And I know just earlier this year we did make a major announcement where we are handling next generation managed services for an entire organization. So our plan is being implemented, and we're seeing great things in the market. I don't want to lose sight of something you said earlier, Jack. Could you dig a little deeper into how we help organizations improve their security postures?
Yeah, absolutely. As we think about security, right, this is an emerging space that there's an unbelievable amount of attention on in the industry right now, both from prevention techniques through recovery techniques for a variety of attack types, right? Whether it's ransomware, whether it's malware, whether it's bad actors, et cetera. And you really need to take a multifaceted plan and thinking and approach to your security plans, right? So at Rackspace, we have a lot of security expertise that we can bring to the table from global experts across key infrastructure or companies such as Google, AWS, and Azure, as well as your standard private cloud offerings like VMware and OpenStack. We have significant amount of professional certifications like CISSP, and lastly, technology certifications across things like Palo Alto, Cisco. So we can bring significant expertise to the conversation to talk about, are we using the right tools and methodologies? And then when we think about cybersecurity governance and practices, as we host solutions and help implement solutions, we want to make sure that we are compliant, that we have governance in place. So building things to be high trust CSF certified, building things with SOC in mind, with PCI, et cetera. These are very important attestations that we want to adhere to and help you adhere to as you're implementing across potentially multiple clouds. Having a risk management program is incredibly important, arguably becoming one of the most important topics alongside an incident response plan, right? Because as Jason mentioned earlier, as I mentioned, there will be incidents, and the key moving forward will be how quick can we recover, how able are we to recover from an inevitable attack. So we want to make sure that we have very clear plans between our organizations to respond to incidents. And I'd say that becoming ever so important to every healthcare organization, right? Because there's so many vendors that you're interacting with, there's so many tools, there's so many people. And how do we bring people, process, technology together to have a robust and comprehensive incident response plan? Because that will be the difference between a long, arduous, painful incident or outage or a short, quick return to normalcy, which I think all of us would agree is what we want for our doctors, for our nurses, and our practitioners to be able to get back to ultimately providing patients the best care possible.
Thanks, Jack. Very interesting perspective there, and 100% agree with you with your thoughts there. So, Jason, could you bring it home? Organizations are out there, and organizations can do elements of everything we've talked about. But why Rackspace for healthcare?
Today we've covered a lot of ground, from the market dynamics to thinking about the complicated journey that IT leaders are challenged with today, the cloud and what that means and how that's defined, some critical workloads in your environment, such as Epic, we've discussed in detail, really looked at next generation managed services, cost and productivity, right? How we're aligning your output, your input to your output, and making sure that we're building the right business case to help you deliver exponentially. Wrapping that all up with security. And so the real question is in all of that, why is Rackspace the right partner for your healthcare organization? It really comes down to the key data points that are on the screen, right? We talked about security and securing your posture, right? And really the capability behind that. Managed services, Epic as a service, right? We have all of those pieces in there, but then we move into that scale, right? We've been a hosting company for 25 years, really doubling down in the last few years in moving from just a hosting provider to a healthcare cloud hosting provider. It's the third largest Epic hosting provider globally. Product engineering and the push for responsible AI solutioning and the technology IP that we have done the massive investments for automation to really drive towards a labor minus model, right? And so it's not just throwing more and more and more expensive bodies at it, but it's driving cost out through automation, through AI, through our talent, and through all of the wonderful things you do.